Manhattan, February 2003. A group of construction workers prepare to demolish an old building in Hell's Kitchen when they make a chilling discovery. A human skull rolls among the debris. What seemed to be a macabre finding would become something much more disturbing. Hidden in a concrete tomb, the body of a young woman had remained buried for more than 3 decades, silently waiting for someone to discover her story. Her name was Patricia Kathleen McGlone. She was barely 16 years old when she disappeared in 1969, leaving behind a newborn child and a marriage to a man twice her age. A ring with her initials, a dime dated 1969, and a toy soldier wrapped in cloth. Pieces of a puzzle that took decades to begin solving. Hello to you listening. Welcome to a different kind of true crime podcast. Here we're going to hear about forgotten homicides, chilling unsolved cases, and puzzling disappearances that time has left behind. My name is not important now. What matters are the stories we'll be examining. So hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode as we embark on this exciting journey into the unknown. An enigmatic homicide case in the heart of Manhattan awakened the interest of the entire nation. On February 10, 2003, a group of construction workers stumbled upon a terrifying discovery inside a building destined for demolition. The most shocking aspect of this discovery was that the victim had lost her life 5 decades earlier. Today we'll immerse ourselves in the story of Patricia McGlone, a teenager whose life was violently interrupted in 1969 but whose case only began to be solved 34 years later. A story of abandonment, loss, and secrets that lay buried under layers of concrete in old New York. Patricia Kathleen McGlone was born at Coney Island Hospital on April 20, 1953, daughter of Bernard McGlone and Patricia Gilligan, an Irish-American girl raised in Brooklyn neighborhoods when the city was undergoing major transformations after World War II. Her childhood was marked by Catholic rituals. She was baptized at St. Patrick's Church in Bay Ridge, took her first communion at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church, and attended Charles Dewey Middle School in Sunset Park. But fate had prepared a difficult path for young Patricia. Her parents died around 1963, leaving her orphaned at 10 years old. Investigators found documentation showing that Patricia received compensation for her father's death, but little more is known about how she coped with this early loss. School records painted the portrait of a troubled teenager. By late 1968 and early 1969, Patricia was attending high school irregularly, missing most of her classes. By then, she had already begun the descent that would lead her to a tragic end. Patricia's stepbrother emerged as an important figure in unraveling her background. Through investigative leads, it was discovered that he had a criminal record following a bank embezzlement case in Kearny, New Jersey. When investigators interviewed the stepbrother's mother, Patricia's stepmother, they obtained surprising revelations. According to this woman, Patricia had fallen into drug use, abandoned her studies, and at the early age of 16, had married, become pregnant, and subsequently abandoned the child. Perhaps most disturbing of all, the family hadn't seen Patricia since 1969, and her disappearance was never officially reported. It was as if the young woman had simply vanished, her absence becoming a silence that no one bothered to break. The search for Patricia's child added another layer of complexity to the case. During that era, when a child was adopted, the birth certificate bore the adoptive parents' names rather than the biological parents, creating a dead end for investigators trying to trace the abandoned baby. Donald Grant, identified through marriage records as Patricia's husband, lived at the same address where her remains were found. A disturbing detail: he was a 32-year-old musician, exactly twice Patricia's age when they married. Detective Ryan Glass, an NYPD cold case investigator, discovered that Grant lived in the building in 1969, but his name no longer appeared there in 1970. This temporal coincidence made him the focus of the investigation. However, locating Grant has proven to be an almost impossible task. Did he disappear deliberately? Did he die too? Or did he simply move on with his life, leaving behind the memory of a teenage wife that no one claimed? In mid-1969, it's believed that Patricia was murdered in or near a nightclub called The Scene. This rock and roll venue, run by a young entrepreneur named Steve Paul, was a true meeting point for celebrities in the 60s. Actors, musicians, and Broadway theater workers passed through its doors, creating an atmosphere of bohemia and rebellion characteristic of that era. But the scene also had its dark side. According to investigations, the club permanently closed its doors on July 12, 1969, after Steve Paul refused to pay protection money to the New York Mafia. This decision provoked fights in the venue that endangered its liquor license. Was Patricia collateral damage from these conflicts with organized crime? Or was her death related to the nightlife activities she frequented? On February 10, 2003, construction workers in Manhattan made a horrifying discovery inside a building that was to be demolished. The find was chilling: the skeleton of a woman initially known as the Downtown Unknown. According to the detective in charge, while excavations were being carried out, the woman's skull came rolling out among the debris, causing horror among the workers. Searching further, they found Patricia tied with electrical cable and in a fetal position exactly as she had been placed decades earlier. Her remains were carefully hidden in a concrete tomb, a level of planning and resources that suggests connections that could reach organized crime. The New York Medical Examiner's Office determined in 2003 that the skeleton belonged to a 16-year-old teenager who was 5 foot 7 inches tall. But the case went cold because her disappearance was never reported, and honestly, the means to identify her just didn't exist. So, in 2017, New York police detectives reopened the case for review. They went ahead and applied modern tests to the forensic evidence that was originally collected at the crime scene, and also to DNA that was extracted from the victim's remains. After a lot of effort, they finally developed an adequate genetic profile, but, due to bone degradation, it actually took quite a bit of time to create a viable DNA profile. Among the findings made back in 2003, there were not only McGlone's remains but also a ring that was marked with the initials PMCG, which matched her name, Patricia Kathleen McGlone. Detectives also discovered a 1969 dime, which gave investigators a starting point in time. Also buried with the teenager was a plastic toy soldier wrapped in cloth, and detectives believe this could have belonged to Patricia's son. With Patricia's identification and connections established through DNA and historical records, the investigation continues to focus on locating Donald Grant. Investigators also maintain hope for what might seem like a remote possibility: locating McGlone's baby through genealogical DNA. If you have any information about this case, please call Crime Stoppers. The number is 1-800-577-TIPS. So, different theories have emerged regarding Patricia's disappearance and death. First, there's the question of her husband's involvement. Donald Grant's relationship with the building where the remains were found really raises some serious suspicions. Could domestic violence have escalated to murder? The lack of information about their relationship definitely complicates this theory. But the fact that a 32-year-old man married a 16-year-old teenager, combined with his mysterious disappearance from the building right after 1969, makes him a key avenue of investigation. There's also the theory of a dangerous encounter. Patricia was found wearing bright clothing, which leads investigators to speculate that maybe she was involved in nightlife or possibly sex work. Hell's Kitchen in the 60s was known for its seedier elements, and it's possible Patricia might have encountered someone dangerous at the Scene Club or nearby. And then, there's the idea of a serial killer connection. Serial killer Joel Rifkin, who targeted sex workers in New York during the 1980s and 90s, was briefly considered a suspect. But his methods and timeline just don't match those of Patricia's death, which pretty much rules him out as a possible perpetrator. But, what do you think about all this? Who do you believe might have had motives to harm Patricia? Was it the husband who was twice her age, some dangerous client, or maybe someone connected to the nightclub conflicts? What factors do you think can contribute to a murder case going cold, like in Patricia's case? How does the lack of a missing person report affect a homicide investigation? What circumstances do you think led Patricia to give her baby up for adoption? And how does the social context of the 1960s play into this decision? Why didn't her family continue reporting her disappearance? What does this tell us about the family and social dynamics of that era? Patricia McGlone's remains stayed hidden for more than 3 decades, buried under layers of concrete and honestly, a lot of oblivion. Her case reminds us that behind every unknown there's a story, an interrupted life, and questions that really deserve answers. As technology advances, cases like Patricia's continue to emerge from the past, giving us the chance to deliver justice, even if it's a bit late. Her story is a reminder of how we treat the most vulnerable in our society: troubled teenagers, young women, people without a solid support network. In conclusion, I sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode and that the theories and questions seemed interesting to you. I'm really looking forward to our next encounter, so stay tuned for the next episode. Until then, goodbye, stranger, and thank you for being part of this journey.